stands out with your matching style. There's no room for doubt. Everybody singing, spinning around. Generally, specifics back in town. Oh, baby.
What's up, everybody? Wild Man with Adventures of Wild Man. Whether you're on the East Coast or the West Coast or in between, I'd like to thank y'all for tuning in to one of the best podcasts here on YouTube. So without further ado, here's your host, Generally Specific.
Oh, you almost had it. You got to be quicker than that.
Well, hello. I'm going to unmute you, Craig. All right.
Yeah.
So good evening. It was supposed to be high noon, but we had to make some adjustments. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, no matter when you are, where you are, who you are, how you are. Craig and I hope you're doing well. This is High Noon with yours truly, Generally Specific. Our special guest is Craig Hendry. It's his second appearance on High Noon. And we believe he's got some information to share. For those of you who aren't familiar with who Craig Hendry is, I'm going to give him an opportunity to fill in the blanks. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, well, first, thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate being able to come on again. So the updates that Generally Specific is referring to is that I just had court today in Vermilion County on a bogus stalking charge. I am being persecuted for exposing the corruption in a city hall building. They always say, don't try to fight the city hall. Well, I'm learning why they say that the hard way. Mm-hmm. So basically at court today, it was a pre-trial court date. We just set other court dates in the future because the prosecution did not want to go to trial in March, which was when the trial was supposed to occur. And then they were bluffing, saying that they wanted to go to trial, but of course they never would go to trial in March. So anyways, at court, I went in. Basically, this is what happened. I mean, I'm going to make it as entertaining as I possibly can. I went in and I saw a few people that I knew. I saw a deputy that was working at the jail when I was staying in jail, when I was wrongfully incarcerated. And then also I saw the prosecutor, who is a big piece of lard who just kind of sits on his butt all day. And so I addressed the cop. I asked him how he was doing. And then I asked the prosecutor, I said, Bruce, because that's his name, Bruce. I'd never address him as Mr. something because he doesn't deserve that respect. But I said, Bruce, how you doing? And he asked me how I was doing. And then we got into court. The judge joined us over Zoom because it was only me and the prosecuting attorney in the courtroom itself. My attorney and the judge attended via Zoom. Of course, you got to keep in mind, this is America, so we are the epitome of professionalism. Mm-hmm. So anyways.
Were they masked up even though they were on Zoom?
They were not masked up. But anyways, the judge, who is a former law enforcement officer, he just wanted to set more pre-trial dates and a court date on August 13th. Now, the big update is that this trial is set to take up 3 days. And of course, trials can take up more days than just 3, or more days than what they're scheduled for. But that is what's happening. On August 13th, we're set for a trial. We've been ready to go to trial ever since March. My attorney did depose the person who was making the allegations against me. And I've heard that went well, but even when I get the transcript from that deposition, the judge in this case, the former law enforcement officer, has decreed that I am not to distribute the contents of this in any way, in any manner, to anybody. I don't even think that my lawyer is legally allowed to give it to me. I think she's just allowed to let me review it. So it's a it's a tricky situation where I would love to be transparent, but I'd hate to be sitting in a cage due to doing it. Of course, I've sat in a cage for promoting transparency, for fighting for transparency a lot. It's nothing new to me. But with 6 open cases and a trial coming up and I kid you not, this is a jury trial coming up. It's not getting set back in 12 days. I'm a busy man and I don't want to miss I do not want to miss the next trial that I've got. I don't want to be tried in absentia. Yeah, so the Sixth Amendment guarantees a right to a speedy trial. Specific speedy trial deadlines are found in federal and state laws. It says many states require cases to go from charges to trial within a few weeks or months, but defendants often waive this right. Defendants who are unfairly denied their right to a speedy trial can ask the judge to dismiss the charges. Now, in Indiana, there's a special provision for this. So I haven't checked federal statutes. I don't know if Indiana statutes violate federal statutes. Of course, the federal government always refers to the supremacy clause to say that their laws are greater than state laws. But in Indiana, the judicial rule is, it's not even set in law. It's in a judicial rule handbook. It is set to where the only way you get a speedy trial is if you are actually incarcerated at that time. So if you're not incarcerated, Indiana doesn't give you a right to a speedy trial. They only give you a right to a fair and public hearing, right? Fair and a public hearing. But they don't give you a right to a speedy trial unless you're in jail. And with COVID coming around, that's actually the time frame on that is extended. Whereas before COVID, and I hate to say, like, I'm not saying anything medically that causes some problems on YouTube, but after that virus came around, the state extended the period for a speedy trial when you're incarcerated from 72 days to 6 months. So even if you're innocent, you can sit in jail in Indiana for 6 months. And of course, if there's if it's court digestion or court congestion, not digestion, there's court congestion, according to the judge, then they'll set it back at infinitum, basically. I mean, they don't care. You know, they just keep you in jail until they give you a trial or until your max sentence has been served.
Well, it kind of puts a citizen in a state of stasis, right? You can't really move forward, you can't move back, you can't go anywhere. You have to kind of wait at the mercy. And I watched your awesome interview with Flex Your Freedoms. And did it give you any pause when he was talking to you about the jury selection and how that worked? And you only have a certain amount of strikes, you can eliminate people, but when they stack it with a bunch of people that seem to be pro bootlicking, as it were, it kind of feels like an insurmountable climb, doesn't it? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, and that stuff definitely does happen. I think it's happened throughout history in jury selections and whatnot. The state has never played fair. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, I mean, the risks are what they are, and the state is going to do everything that they can in this case. The only thing that I worry about in this particular instance is that the judge is a former law enforcement officer. So that kind of gives me a little bit of concern that maybe he is going to be distracted because of his leanings toward favoring law enforcement. And I am clearly an individual. I'm a public figure that is known for showing a suspicion about law enforcement, mm-hmm. and they don't appreciate that. So that's kind of what gives me a little bit of concern there. I do think that they will try to stack the jury, but of course in Vermilion County, the place that I do have the trial, I do have a lot of supporters. So I'm not going to count out that a few of my supporters will be sitting on the jury, but I'm not gonna count out the fact that they could just load it with a whole bunch of people that dislike me, or maybe people whose family is in the law enforcement profession and whatnot. And if that happens, I mean, I don't think it takes anything away from it. I think the court of public opinion has already decided this case. They've been provided all the information with regards to discovery in this case, and except for the discovery that the state has. But of course, they've been provided everything by ways of videos that I have of every interaction with with every public official in that building. So I'm not hiding anything. So the public can decide what they want and what they believe. It's just about, at this point, it's just about getting through their system under the threat of violence.
Yeah, so it's really interesting to me because it was kind of eye-opening to hear Flex. I mean, here's a guy who served his country, right?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, how many times do we hear politicians, thank you for your service, blah, 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 blah. You know, it's what are they, shaking babies and kissing hands, thanking vets for their service? Or is I get those two mixed up. Is it you kiss the babies and shake the hands, or is it
I have no clue. I've never heard it before.
Okay, so we do have questions coming in. I'm trying not to miss those. So I'm going to star those and we can get to those later. Okay, Craig, if you're all right with that. If you see somebody,
absolutely.
Yeah. So I don't know can you see if there's something starred or not? Oh, looks like
I see Lawrence Accountability has a question, but I don't know if that's showing up on your channel.
Yeah. So I'll star that. And we'll get to that here in a minute. Would you like to introduce yourself though, for those that don't know who you are, they don't understand what community you're in. I've got a wide variety audience that's starting to grow, and just to
So I am a civil rights activist. I'm actually an anti-government activist. I believe that the government should not do anything that is done through coercion. And of course, all governments operate through coercion. So basically what I do is I run a YouTube channel promoting in creative, fun, and sometimes extremely serious ways that the government does bad things to good people, and that its abolition is not only beneficial to us, but it's absolutely necessary if we wish to live in a peaceful and voluntary society. That's basically what I do. I'm from Indiana. I have 6 open cases brought against me, criminal cases brought against me by the government. 5 of them are here in Indiana. 1 of them is over in the great Commonwealth of Kentucky. They got a lot of great people over there. And so that is where I'm at right now. I mean, I am fighting against this system that I believe to be corrupt, and I'm doing it in the best way that I know how, by being transparent and just hiring good people to help me through the process in court.
So we're just kind of Solar Bear was asking, has the DUI guy represented you well despite the drama with you want to avoid that?
Well, no, the DUI guy has represented me just fine. I mean, the DUI guy's only shown up in court for me once, because we only went to court once, and then after that we've got a jury trial. I haven't gotten in touch with him for quite a while, but we are on the same page, and I think Larry is an extremely competent attorney. I think his YouTube channel definitely shows that. So I feel confident in the guy. I just wish that he practiced here in Indiana, because I've only got 1 case in Kentucky. I've got 5 in Indiana, and I do believe that he is a great lawyer. Despite all that drama, I don't get involved in that drama. For Public Safety is a great friend of mine, though, and he's a great person. I truly believe that, but that drama is solely between those two.
Absolutely. So we got another question. We'll go ahead and field that one if you're comfortable with that, Craig.
So
can you go ahead and read it for those that are
question for Craig. The question is, has local law enforcement officers had First Amendment auditor training yet? I want to make this very clear to everybody. Sheriff's associations across the country have been not training in a sense, but preparing for these First Amendment auditors to come around. They are trying new creative ways to have them charged with crimes. They're trying to, they're just trying to railroad us. They're trying to strategize ways to deal with what they see as a problem. And so the answer in short is yes, but it's not quite the training that you would expect or like.
So I think he's probably asking is also have you done any PRRs, to try to find out if they've had any kind of like email sent warning, like you're saying.
They have
you can confirm.
They have had emails sent. We are going. Well, I don't want to talk about that right now because of some legal reasons. But we do have proof that there have been emails sent to various different municipalities, sheriff's departments, by state representatives, by some sheriffs. So they have received emails, but the only First Amendment auditor training that I've ever heard of, and this wasn't First Amendment auditor training, it was civil rights training, was out of Boyd County, Kentucky. After I got arrested,
Mhm.
I asked the sheriff, the new sheriff out there, if he had been doing anything to avoid that happening in the future. And he said he had. I didn't do a public records request. I took him at his word, but that's the only time that I've heard of them actually holding a formal training session on civil rights.
Okay, so we got to follow up. Let me do a little bit of housekeeping, Craig, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
If you and this is for your crowd as well. If you have questions, please do me a favor. Type in capital question with a colon, and then whatever your question is. It's fine if you want to put it all in caps, so it really gets my attention. Sometimes I miss stuff, guys. So if I do miss your question, and I'm not, I'll just say something like "starred that one." All right, starred that one. If you don't see your question going up there, that means I might have missed it. Feel free to put it up again. I'm not going to get angry or anything like that. Craig's being gracious enough to answer what he's willing to answer, and if he chooses to give a mulligan or a pass, then that's your answer. So that said, we're going to get into later. We're going to have a conversation. Hopefully, I'm not sure how much time you have available tonight, Greg, but and depending on how we vibe. And
I don't have too much time available.
Okay.
I will be honest, but I'm hoping to stay on with you for an hour and a half again.
Oh wow, okay, that's
Yeah.
more than I expected. So
Okay, great.
all right. Okay, so follow up. Referring to court strategy and their lacking ability to handle it, I'm referring to actual training out in their training files. So that's kind of what he's looking for.
Yeah, and Lawrence accountability, unfortunately, I do not have any paper proof on me or even in my emails at the moment for that. Like I say, I've done some APRA requests, it's a FOIA request out here in Indiana, but that is it's a singular one, and that is something that I'm going to be using for other purposes. So I won't be displaying that here on the screen, or I can't talk about it. But there was no formal training. No.
Okay. Yeah, one of my pet projects when I start going out there and listen, I'm listening to you guys. I mean, you're very articulate. I mean, you can be confrontational when you're getting stepped on. That's obvious. I mean, a cat's going to cry out when you step on its tail. So wouldn't a dog? Why anything would?
Yeah.
And then I see someone like you, someone like Flex, all these people getting snatched up and crimes being perpetrated against auditors and them getting pinned for crimes that they didn't even do. And, as somebody who's thinking about stepping out, I mean, it's kind of sobering. And I think they're doing it on purpose because I think they're trying to quell any kind of a grassroots groundswell of this happening. And so I'm planning on doing like open records requests or like Cora here in Kentucky.
Yeah.
For like civics training, DEI, and CRT. So if they're putting money into CRT and DEI, but none into civics training, we have a problem.
Yeah.
I already know the answer.
I believe that you're correct as far as they are trying to quell they don't want anybody new getting into this, and they don't want anybody old staying into this field of recording government officials because they make themselves look so bad. So, and I think that ultimately my advice to anybody who's looking to step out and try to do this is if you see the problem and if it is a massive problem to you and you feel very strongly about it, my advice to you would be step out of the country, because this country is going to ruin you if you try to step on their toes. And that means state governments, the U.S. government, especially the U.S. government, but the state governments will do it just the same.
It's sobering. So Stephanie Jenks had a question. She said, how long ago did you get into recording the government and why? I think we talked about it on the first one a little bit. If you want to expound on that, though.
Yeah, so I basically, ever since I was 18, I have been listening to people like Peter Schiff. Basically, I've started listening to a lot of economists when I was 18 years old. And I realized that the government, despite some good doers in government trying to do good, that it's economically impossible for the government to do something good because they don't have the price controls mechanism. They don't have the price mechanism working to tell them how they're being efficient or if they're being efficient. So basically, all the government leads to is poverty and tyranny. And ever since I realized that, I've been trying to get that message out in various different ways. I first started with a podcast on Spotify. I don't even know if it's still on there, but it's called Hard Money with Craig. And I'm talking about the benefits of the government being out of money, because prior to the government getting into money and using fiat, they were using gold. But that podcast completely failed. I did about 8 episodes. I was a 20-year-old kid at the time. I mean, 20-year-old young man, I should say. And nobody wanted to listen to me, especially talking about money. Now, I did have money at the time, but not enough for anybody to listen to me about. So basically, I decided, well, I've got to get my voice out there some other way. And a lot of people are interested in seeing police interactions, especially because police make themselves look so bad. Yeah. So I started watching James Freeman. That was really it. That was my guy. I was watching James Freeman. And I decided that I could do what he was doing in his part of the country, in my part of the country, and implement my message through those fun, entertaining interactions. And so that's exactly why I got involved in it.
Yeah, so thank you for answering that. So I'm gonna go ahead and hide that one here. I got another one here from Bip. Bip asks a question here, and by the way, I just wanted to say thank you, Steve Gandalf. I did it, guys. I said the magic word, and I know I got to do the thing, right? Got to do the thing.
You shall not pass!
That's great. I don't think you did that thing in the first one.
Yeah, it's a thing now for the channel. Whenever someone doesn't abuse it, but it just kind of comes up naturally, we have to throw it out there.
Yeah.
So
I'll read the question out.
Here you go.
When do you get to file civil rights lawsuits? Do you have to wait for criminal charges to be dismissed? Do you have a lawyer for that? There's 3 questions. When do you get to file civil rights lawsuits? Whenever. So you can file them whenever. I mean, it's do you have to wait for criminal charges to be dismissed? No.
It would strengthen your case, though, wouldn't it?
Well, if the criminal charges get dismissed, usually, so this is it. You file the lawsuit, but in order to litigate the lawsuit, you do have to wait for the criminal charges to be dismissed. Okay. So then, do you have a lawyer for that? I have a lawyer that handles civil rights litigation. I am responsible for filing tort claims, which have to be filed within 6 months of any damages being received. And then after the criminal case is over, we have all the evidence that is barred from being basically transmitted to anybody other than me and my civil or my criminal attorney. Then I can gather that evidence. I can give it to him, and he will decide whether or not he wants to take that case. We are suing Lake County, Indiana currently, and Farmersburg, Indiana, the town in which my last 2 most popular videos have been about. They are about to get a surprise in the mail as far as a notice goes. So we'll get into that on another day. So they're about to receive something that might not be too well received by them.
That's funny, man. Hey, listen, man, I sit there and I listen to how articulate you are. Have you thought about maybe re-releasing your situation, like your financial situation? I mean, there's a lack of, what are you, 28 now, 26?
I'm 25 now.
Oh, okay. Well, you're 25, man. You're listen, I'm telling you, man, I was a knucklehead when I was 25.
Well, same here. I don't want to make I don't want to make myself sound like I'm better. I am absolutely prone to making great mistakes. So, and I do often as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, there's humility is a good thing. According to my intro, there seems to be a lack of humility on somebody's part. If you have any,
I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
If you have any questions or anyone that's commenting on your side that I'm not aware of, or any kind of a super chat you want to bring up, you just go ahead, and I think you have control of that or something. Or
I do not. I don't know if you can see it. So we've got a question from Katie Kidman. This is
there. It is. Yep.
So she asks, how has this affected your family, and what, if anything, would you do differently? Well, Katie, this has affected my family in the sense that my son has to spend certain days, sometimes weeks, without me being involved in his life. And I am, despite what a lot of people like to say, a lot of kind of gross, disgusting people like to say on my YouTube channel.
Oh, yes.
I am extremely involved in my son's life. He, everything. I do flashcards with him. I do mathematics with them out of school. We're trying to get them involved in the church more often. I'm involved. I am at the head of all of that. I've got my beautiful girlfriend, Erica, carrying another baby inside of her. She is due in June. And Erica, it affects Erica a whole lot as well. I mean, as hard as it is to not have your dad there for Nathan, who's my son, Erica has to go through raising a kid while being pregnant with another kid by herself in this time that I'm in jail. And also, it's very stressful for them when I've got court because they don't know if I'm coming home that day. So it's extremely terrible for my family. I actually think it affects them a lot more than it affects me because I am strong mentally. I can deal with this kind of stuff. As tough as it is, I can cope. But it has caused breakdowns amongst my family, the likes of which I don't feel like sharing. But it's been an awful experience for them, and I hate that it's happening. It's affected me and my family to the point where we are convinced that after these criminal cases have been concluded, that we will have to exit the country in order to raise our children in an effective and stable environment. So
how sobering is that realization, right? So it, first off, I want to say that, and I'm not trying to bring her up in any kind of a weird way or anything like that, but just kudos to your girlfriend, man. She's a champion.
Thank you. I totally agree. I can't give her enough credit. When I was in jail, she was fighting for me out here every day. So, and I there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes, hours of phone calls to lawyers, hours of phone calls to bondsmen that, people just don't see that stuff. So she is a real champ. I thank you for bringing that. Absolutely. Thank you to Eric.
I didn't want to step across the boundary or anything like that.
No, absolutely.
With the greatest respect, I say this. And for those people that are, listen, man, there's some disgusting people out there. And when you become a public figure, unfortunately, sometimes your family members suffer along with you a little bit. But, you talked about the church. Count it all joy when you fall into certain trials and tribulations. It's a testing and approving grounds of your faith. It'll strengthen you and increase you. And just endure, man. It breaks my heart to think that you're going to leave this country. Oops, I pulled that down, didn't I?
Yeah, and ultimately, I think that it will be a trend that we see. I mean, when people can't feed their families, when people can't feed themselves, their only option, and we see it in other countries, they thought the grass was greener here. A whole bunch of other people in other countries thought the grass was greener here. Well, it won't be too long before we're literally starving out here. I mean, they thought the Great Depression was bad in America. Just wait until we have the same kind of economic collapse, but we don't have any industrial foundation in this country at all anymore. At least in the Great Depression, we had some industry. Now that's gone. So
we don't do any of our own medication. Everything's outsourced. Everything except we're service oriented. That's it. Postmates and
and ultimately people need goods to service. So if they don't have the goods, then there's no need for the service sector. Those people go broke too. It's a shame what's going to happen, and it's a shame that more people don't foresee it.
I don't know done on purpose.
I don't know that I'll be able to leave the country in time, which is the only scary thing.
Yeah, and I think the reality of it being done on purpose is the ultimate salt in the wound, in my opinion. So we get a question from Solar Bear. Question is the government worse than you thought, on par, or better than you thought? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Well, I think you kind of sort of answered that a little bit, but go ahead.
Yeah, I see myself far, far away from this place. I won't exactly say, but the government is certainly they're just as bad. I don't think I could have any lower opinion of government and their officials.
Yeah, and I'd like to echo on that as well. I mean, someone that served their country. I love my country, I really do, and I think Americans, by and large, are the most generous people in the world that I've met.
They're great people. We got a lot of great people here. We really do.
Just everyone's sleepwalking, though. I mean, it's like it's like everyone's doing the zombie lean. Like, look at our main cities. Look at Philadelphia. I mean, it's like it's the Walking Dead out there, folks. And people are so self-absorbed on their phones. They're looking down on their phones. They're not looking to see what's going on. And Craig is rightly pointing it out. Go ahead. We have the question is, should all police officers be sent back to the police academy for properly understanding address numbers?
The answer to that is no. They should be sent back to their home and told that if they want a paycheck, they're going to have to go find somebody that's willing to pay them instead of extorting the taxpayer dollars. That's what I think all law enforcement officers should be doing.
Yeah, Joe Cole pipes in. He says, "Government is worse than I ever imagined, and I already had a low opinion of them."
Yeah, thanks for being here, Joe Cool. I'm always glad to see Joe Cool in this chat, man. I mean, he was one of those first channels that I saw, and he was one of the first channels to help my channel by sharing one of my videos. So
yeah, we had a good panel conversation one morning. You came in.
I saw that. Yeah.
It was enjoyable. So we're gonna do this question here, and then if you don't mind, I would really like a little bit of a walk, and I would like to hear your argument. And I'm gonna pose a premise to you, and I would like your response to it. And again, there's no really right or wrong answer. It's just I'm willing to listen. And again, I don't really have a dog in a fight other than the fact that I live in a place that you're wanting to get out of.
Yeah.
and I see why. But so the question from Stephanie Jenks is, do you or have you ever thought about going into politics to possibly make changes?
So I have thought about it. Every time I think about it, I always come back to the same conclusion, that it would be joining the evil from the inside, and I ultimately wouldn't ever be able to make it. And I also have to humble myself. I have to keep myself humble. A lot of people think, well, if I could only get in there, I could fix it. My whole premise for not liking government is that no man is smart enough to know what's right for another man. So if I wanted to elevate myself to say, well, I'm going to take on that task, I would inherently be violating my own reason. So I have thought about it, but I always come back to it. I say it's a no-go. Moral principles, I couldn't do it.
So Katie Kidman has a response there, but I also want to chime in. I'm gonna go ahead and read it. I left the country and came back to the U.S. all the wiser. Americans are not free to work in other countries. I would recommend fighting for your own country. Yeah, I'm pretty much gonna live / die / I'm just gonna grow where I'm planted.
Yeah.
If God tells me to move, I'll move. If I was a young man like yourself, brother, I can't say that I would do anything different than what you're doing. I'm an old dude. My hip.
Well, hey, and Katie, I think that that is a reasonable concern, not being able to work in another country. Another thing about leaving America when you are a American citizen is that we are one of the only countries that makes people pay to revoke citizenship. And if you don't pay to revoke your citizenship, you are going to have to pay income taxes, whether you are in country or out of country. So even if you do work, you're going to end up owing double taxation. You're going to pay that government. You're going to be on the hook for taxes back home as well. Mm-hmm. I am in a unique position. I am eligible to get a citizenship out of Scotland because one of my immediate family members is from Scotland. And I visit over there. I've got my whole other side of the family is over there. So I do have an option to go and get that, but I also have an option to just revoke my citizenship and apply for work visas elsewhere, yada, yada, yada. And at this point, obstacles will get in the way, but it is so worth it to get my family out of here and to safety that I will jump over those obstacles. I will jump through the hoops in order to get there, to get wherever I need to go.
Yeah, good answer. So I'm going to give a little bit of a. I think we're going to go into my thoughts, my queries, my question, my concerns of a cooperative place where there's a non-aggression. All right, so we're going to talk about anarchism. Now, would you like to present what your interpretation or your definition of what anarchism is? Not anarchy, because I think that's a little different. And I think I misunderstood that one when I was talking to Brian. I think I kind of misunderstood the whole premise. It doesn't mean you're a gaping vagina that won't defend themselves. So
no, it's the complete opposite. Anarchy is, in a nutshell, there's no government. People take responsibility for themselves and they reap the consequences of their own actions. But on the other coin, they reap the benefits of their own actions. So if you're in an anarchism, if you're living in an anarchic society, then ultimately what you do is on you. And, not like, so for example, if you decide to leave the house without a gun, You aren't, there's no guarantee that there's going to be somebody out there to keep you safe. You take that responsibility, you put it on your own shoulders. And the same for economics. If you're a young man like myself and you want to retire early, you don't pay money into a Social Security slush fund that gets, whatever. We won't talk about that.
It gets robbed. Yeah.
Yeah, it gets robbed. But, you take responsibility for your own. You find a banker that you trust and you give your money to them, and you maybe tell them that you'd like to invest in certain companies. You got it on and on and on. It's basically life without a government that has the legal right to take from you and give to others or keep it themselves.
Right. It all sounds reasonable. It all sounds wonderful. But then I explain to people that they realize how precarious, they don't realize how precariously balanced civility and civilization is on a razor's edge until something happens that disrupts the status quo. Whether you agree with the status quo or not, I believe that anarchism exists in the gaps between order, right? So chaos in between order, where there are no rulers. Now, this is probably not the most ideal situation. This isn't what you would dream up if you were to have your perfect model of anarchism. I grant that. I absolutely do.
Well, no, there would be horrors in anarchism.
Absolutely.
There would be horrors in anarchism. And anarchy does exist today, by the way. Mm-hmm. Anarchy exists in, like you say, and I think you put it very eloquently, although I'm going to expand on it, in the gaps between power. So, for example, the relationship between Canada and the United States is an anarchy, right? The United States doesn't get to tell Canada what to do, and likewise, Canada doesn't get to tell the U.S. what to do. But somehow, we've existed next to each other since 1812, right? Without any war occurring between the two countries. So and by the way, Mexico's the same way. We did have a brief war with Mexico at one point in our history, but we've existed peacefully with the Mexican government and the U.S. government for hundreds of years, or for 100+ years. I'll put it like that. I don't know about hundreds of years, but for 100+ years. So anarchy does exist today. It's just about, if we were to achieve it, we would break down the sovereign units. So, for example, the United States is a sovereign unit. We would break that down first, maybe between the states. And maybe the states would be the next highest, or the highest sovereign in this geographical location. But then, if we'd like to take it a step farther,
that would be like federalism, though, wouldn't it? I mean, being a federalist.
Well, yeah. So this is the process. I'm telling you, this is a way that we could get there.
Segmenting it. Okay.
Yeah. So then we could break it down to counties within. So
from the macro to the micro. Okay.
Right. Exactly. And then we break it down. And I have a feeling that if we were to try this, and by the way, history has proved that this is absolutely true, that when you have a smaller government, you find that it's more efficient, you find that it's less intrusive, and you find that it's much easier to leave the rule of that government because the unit isn't so big, right? If I don't like Indiana, I'll go to Illinois. If I don't like Greene County, I'll go to Orange County, or you know what I mean? Anything. So people vote with their feet.
Right. So, but let's extrapolate out that everything's honky dory from the macro to the micro in America, smallest government ever. I'm guessing probably less of a standing military, maybe like a militia that would, be regular.
No standing military. No standing.
Well, it would be like a civilian militia that's regular. They're regulated, meaning that they're practiced, and everyone keeps their arms and they train.
Are we in anarchy? Are we in anarchy in this scenario?
No. Because I'm going from your macro all the way down to your micro.
Yeah.
Right?
So it wouldn't be a regulated militia, by the way.
No, it's self-regulated. Regulated as in not like bureaucratically regulated, but regulated as in well trained and practiced.
Okay.
That's what I'm talking about.
In some cases, I believe that would be true.
So that would be the only way that I could see it being able to protect itself without having a big standing army. Because as things get better and better and better in this country, people are going to look over and go, "Hey, what's going on in Craigville?" And we talked about this. So eventually, when you're trying to protect what you got, even though it's at the micro, it's really cool and it's starting to expand and people are taking notice. People are going to want what you have. Look at Detroit in the 50s. It was like the Paris of America, right? And then
Yeah,
everyone
and
flocked there.
Everybody's ultimately going to want what others have, right? It's just about, do they think they can take it? And what's the risk to reward?
Right. So in order to keep what you have that's beneficial and good, and if you have a comment you want to read, feel free to read it out. I see you smiling, so that's a good thing. I like that. But go ahead. Did you want to read something?
No. I am reading the comments, but I don't have anything that I need to read
okay.
out.
So I just kind of wanted to point this out, as to some people don't realize, like I say, listen, this whole Never Never Land, Peter Pan, Wendy, and Tinkerbell and Fairy Dust and Everyone Flies, that's all great. But you got a lot of indoor cats acting like they think they're outdoor cats, and they don't really understand.
They don't have any home training.
Well, it's not only that, but they just don't really understand what it takes to keep what you got, and they don't understand the level of violence that someone else would be willing to exact to take what you have. So here's an example of. I know we're somewhat removed from this, but here's a perfect example of what can happen when order breaks down.
Tonight, an I-Team exclusive, new video and information on the men who claim to have set up vigilante patrols in Algiers Point. Did the West Bank turn into the Wild West in the days following Hurricane Katrina?
Let's go to W.
And this is kind of a perfect example almost of what you're talking about. When government's not in the way doing what they want to do, it gives an opportunity for people to say, okay, we're going to set up our own defense. And we're going to protect our neighborhood the way we want to protect our neighborhood. So this is not necessarily a negative thing or a positive thing, but this is just an observable thing. So
WDSU News Channel 6 reporter Travers Mackel with the I-Team investigation you'll see only on 6. Travers?
Well, Norman, we talked to the victim of a vigilante shooting as well as neighbors over here in Algiers Point. Many of them tell us that in the days following Hurricane Katrina, some men felt compelled to take matters into their own hands. Algiers Point was a mess after Hurricane Katrina hit the area. You can see in this home video, trees were down, power out, but no flooding. Kathy Carmack never evacuated. She stayed in her home on Belleville Street the entire time. Here she is, sitting on her porch in home video taken before power was restored to the city.
It was horrific. To me, it was.
Kathy says, making matters worse, the local militia who set up shop to defend the area.
Well, you hear gunshots. You see them running down Belleville Street with their rifles and their guns after somebody. It was like a 24/7 parole by them, because there was nobody here at the time. There wasn't any army, police, or anything.
One of the men Kathy says patrolled the point, this man, Paul Gleason, her neighbor, who spoke out 12 days after the storm hit.
Did you have any problems with looters?
Not anymore.
Not anymore?
Not anymore. But you did.
They're all dead.
They're all dead.
What happened?
We shot them.
How many people you shoot?
38.
38 people. What did you do with the bodies? You take them to?
Gave them to the Coast Guard.
With a cup of red wine in one hand and riding a
She thinks my tractor's sexy. That's what I'm talking about.
tractor from Blaine Kern's Mardi Gras world, Gleason told his story to Esteban Balog and Michael Orsini, two cops from Pennsylvania who came to New Orleans to help provide security after the storm.
I got a sense that he wanted to tell somebody his activities. This is what happened. This is how bad it was. The emotion that he was talking with was live or die, and I had to do what I had to do.
Oh, I
tried to shoot to put them down. We didn't try to shoot and kill.
Oh, okay. So did you
killed a number of them.
How many did you kill roughly?
Who cares? Matter.
Yeah, I hear you.
It doesn't matter. They chose to die. They chose to commit suicide. They opened up on us, so we fired back.
It makes me sick. It makes me sick to my stomach to even, hear that guy talking about how many people they shot, killed, and,
One man shot in the days after Hurricane Katrina is Donnell Harrington. He shows the scars from a gunshot wound to the back. Harrington says he was in Algiers Point a few days after the storm when a vigilante fired at him with a shotgun.
we was just walking through the neighborhood.
Do you have any problem with looters?
Harrington says he was not looting or causing any problems.
You know, that was just an opportunity for them to, you know, to do just what they did, you know, for their own personal reasons.
Harrington couldn't say for sure if Gleason was the man who shot him.
The only thing I remember him saying is a bunch of, you know, racial slangs, using the N-word and just, you know.
After being shot, Harrington went for help and ended up at West Jefferson Medical Center.
Basically, most of the individuals that
I
stayed
mean, it's almost
back.
over, but I think we kind of get the. I think now
Yeah,
we're just
and
kind of
ultimately,
kicking
I
the
mean,
dead
there's
horse.
a whole lot of unsubstantiated claims there, but
Yeah, all the way around.
yeah, all the way around. The guy. I mean, look, if somebody's trying to break into your property in an anarchy, you shoot them.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what happens. I don't know. It's what happens today, though, right? If
I
someone
think
tries
there's
to
a
break
term
into,
for that. Is it like a Foxtrot Alpha, Foxtrot Oscar?
I don't
F
know.
around and find out.
Oh yeah, certainly. I mean, and the thing is like this kind of stuff happens, man. It's the real world. I mean, this is the reality, though. We've got somebody claiming that 38 people were shot trying to break into property. We've got somebody else claiming that 38 people were shot. You know, and
Minding their own
the
business.
guy was making racial slurs. Perhaps he's alleging that he was shooting at folks because of their skin color. I'm not sure. But what I do know is that the number that we're talking here aren't 12 million. Right. And that's the kind of numbers that you get when you're dealing with statism producing horrors. You're dealing with 12 million people being gassed to death. And before they're gassed to death, they are systematically shuffled into slave camps. Like as what happened in the 1930s and 40s in Germany. There's a few more examples as well. I believe I don't know if it was Stalin or Lenin.
You're talking about the Holodomor or Stalin?
Is this the Ukrainian? They killed 5 million Ukrainians by starving them.
They said between 6 million and 20 million ethnic Ukrainians. They had to put posters up around villages saying it's not right to eat your children.
Yeah, and you know they didn't have to put those posters up. I mean, people know that, but you know it's crazy that people compare. In my opinion, it's crazy that people compare these atrocities to those atrocities. Atrocities happen. People are bad, and people need to take responsibility for their own safety. God love us, we need to take responsibility for our own safety because Lord knows nobody else cares about our safety more than we do. That's the fact. So, absent government, with government, take responsibility for your own safety. Do not rely on a third party that's minutes away when seconds matter. Atrocities will happen to you.
Yeah, I agree with what you just said, Craig. I absolutely agree with what you just said.
By the way, I don't want anybody to think that I'm just some guy sitting here in a suit that's never been through anything. I have been robbed at gunpoint. I have had to spend 90 plus days in the top 5, one of the top 5 worst jails in this state. It's Vigo County Jail. I was in the old jail on the old side where they put young men. I've been in multiple fights in that jail, not won all of them either. And I know exactly what it's required to defend what you have, by the way. When commissary day comes around, trust me, there are some broke people in there that are hungry. And they are willing to choose somebody who talks proper, who looks proper. They're not willing to pick on the guys who look like thugs, right? So I know exactly what it means to defend yourself against people who are willing to use quite a bit of violence to take what you have. And by the way, knowing that scary reality, I still would prefer anarchism against this statism where these people in the state are claiming that they're going to keep me safe. Like they claimed they were going to keep everybody else safe during COVID by forcing them to quit their jobs, by ruining their lives, by making their mental status completely screwed because they didn't get out of their house for months on end. So I prefer anarchy where I'm responsible for my own safety. And if I screw up, I pay for that. Then in this statism where they say they're going to provide for my safety and then they screw me up anyways. They screw millions of people up and nobody can do anything about it because they're so powerful.
So it's interesting what you're saying. I got a question from Miss Dove there that we can look and I want to kind of expound upon what you're saying and what your reasonings are for wanting to leave the country and how I'm in agreement in a lot of ways. So question would be, would you having a record hindered you going to some other country? Is that going to be Canada?
Yeah,
I think it would be, right?
Yeah, and in some other countries as well, for sure. That is a factor. Although I can leave the country,
Yeah.
you know, it's just about what other countries are willing to accept people in. And there's a few countries that will not accept people in. I do believe Canada's one. I think Poland might be on board with that kind of stuff. But ultimately, if there are countries that are not willing to accept people that have been charged with crimes by the government, I don't want to be there.
Gotcha. And so we're about at the hour mark. We're a little under the hour mark, Craig.
Yeah.
I do understand it. So I want to kind of talk about what you see is going on in our country. Like, why do you think they're infiltrating our country with a bunch of people? I mean, you said yourself, when you're having a problem feeding your own family as a Native American, and then they're bringing in a bunch more competition for food and lodging and clothing and medicine and ER visit and all this other stuff. They're just trucking them in, and it has to be intentional.
Yeah, well, I don't know their intentions, but I will say that the end result is, I mean, I can speculate on their intentions, but it would ultimately just be speculation. I hate to burst somebody's bubble here, and I'm sure I'll burst a lot of people's bubble, but immigrants and illegal, legal migrants are not your enemy. I tend to believe that it's a divide and conquer thing, where if they can get you pointing the finger at someone else, you're not pointing the finger at them. But this is the real deal. China has many, many more people in it. And by the way, there's tons of farmland still left in China. I mean, it's not like China is like Chinese people are starving. By the way, Chinese people are much wealthier than us on average. They buy new cars with much more ease than Americans buy new cars. They buy new homes with much more ease than Americans buy new homes. Ultimately, more people in the country isn't the problem. The problem is more the legals, right? Because these legals are being forced to pay taxes to this terrible entity that is ultimately oppressing everybody. And that's the real problem. The real problem is not that these migrants can come in and work cheaper and produce things cheaper. If they can produce things cheaper, we can buy them cheaper. That's what that translates into.
But we're not producing anything here.
Yeah, the problem is that we can't produce at all. The problem is that we're so weighed down when we're legal, when we are in their system, we have that social security number. We are so weighed down that we can't produce. The problem isn't these new people coming in that are flying under the radar, that are in the black market that can produce. The problem is that they've got all of us so weighed down by regulation and taxation that we can't produce, we can't even consume.
Right. So let me just push back on what you said. I mean, you talked about, you had a channel talking about economy and managing money and how to make money and stuff. So it's supply and demand. I mean, you yourself said it's more and more expensive to be able to put food on the table for your family. So when you add more mouths to feed, that's more competition for the same amount of food. So how is that not an effect on the normal, everyday, average citizen beyond and above what you're talking about, which I agree with?
Well, you can only eat what's there, right? And if these people are coming in and working the farms, ultimately they're producing more food, right? But and one person can produce a hell of a lot more food than they need. But the thing is that, you can produce more food. That's kind of the wonders of the 21st century. But if you don't have the food, you can't consume it. Everybody's struggling. The problem, we've never had a problem competing for food here. Everybody in America has always been overweight. And that's not our issue. The issue is that the jobs are no more. Like we're competing for no jobs because there's no goddamn jobs. All those jobs are overseas because they can produce it cheaper. Well, the only way to bring those jobs back is by saying, hey, look over here. We can produce cheaper. Come employ us. And they ain't employing Americans. They're employing these illegals because they can do it on the black market and it's much cheaper. And so the problem isn't that that they aren't, that they're taking food from us. Like I promise you that I did detasseling when I was growing up. When I was 14 to 17, I did detasseling in the cornfields. I don't know if you know what that is. It's just you walk through the cornfields, you take the tassels off. And that's all that you do. It's extremely taxing on a young man, and it's extremely hot out there in the summer. But we got replaced by migrants. And it's not because these migrants are like, I'm sure they are better workers, but they're doing better work for cheaper. And that's really it. So they are contributing to the food supply. I mean, that when you
hold on. I don't know if you've been looking at the news. I know you're pretty tied up in your own cases right now, but I mean, they're staying up in like 5-star hotels, man. They're getting EBT cards. They're bitching about their accommodations. They're dressed in nicer clothes than I have. So these
Yeah,
aren't
well,
people
yeah,
that are
that's not
coming.
their
Well, hold
fault.
on though. With respect, these aren't people coming here to look for a better life to get a job. These are people that are complaining. They're running around graping people. I mean, all kinds of horrible stuff's going on. They're purposely putting them in certain parts of the country in order to. I'm just saying, man.
Well, and
There's
we
some.
don't know what their intentions are when they come here. I
I'm not
couldn't
saying
think
what
of
I'm not saying
that.
what their intentions are. I'm talking about the intentions of the government that's purposely flooding our country with people. When
Right,
we
but
have
you said
homeless
these aren't
people.
people coming here looking for a better life. You don't know that. They certainly could be. And the other thing is it's not their fault that they're getting this stuff, right? It's you don't blame them for taking it. You blame the people that are taking your shit and giving it to them. That's the only person you blame. That
Yeah,
was
that's
who you
maybe
blamed with this.
hold up. Maybe I don't want to be mischaracterized. Maybe you're mishearing me, Craig. I've never once blamed anyone for wanting to come to America. I understand everyone would want to come to America, except for you. You want to leave.
Right, yeah.
But that
Most
said,
people do, by the way. A lot of young
right,
men do, or they end up killing themselves.
right. That said, what I'm saying is it seems that there's a purposeful thing by the same government that you and I are not really for, to do this in order to put a stick in the front spokes of a bicycle that was going along just fine.
Well, it wasn't.
Well, it was. I mean, I'm old enough to listen, man. I'm old enough to know what the world was like, back in the 80s and the 90s, and it was a lot better than it is now. With respect.
And we weren't 33 trillion in debt either. And
that
bicycle is deep underwater, by the way. We're not moving along just fine at all. We're spinning our wheels.
Yeah, but we weren't in the 80s and the 90s. But that said, so what I'm saying is I have something to compare it to. When I grew up, I feel for you. I feel for people your age. When I was growing up, I really felt like I could do anything. I felt like the world was my oyster. Whatever I put my mind to, I could accomplish. And I think most people about my age would probably say the same thing. And I understand what you're going through. And I understand where you are, exactly where you are. I don't blame you for having your mindset. Matter of fact, it's probably really smart. It's probably really smart, right?
Thank you. I hope so.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's, I'm just sitting here puzzled because I've seen before and now I'm seeing the now. And that's the part that's got me confused. And I don't think it's going to get any more orderly. I think it's going to become more anarchism.
Okay. Yeah. And I mean, I think that ultimately when states deteriorate, it always leads to mass murder, mass poverty, and mass incarceration. That's always what it leads to, by the way, without exception. And so that's something that we want to avoid. But and again, I don't know what the government's intentions are with this. I know that the government is so big and so unorganized and so inefficient that perhaps somebody in the Border Patrol wants to let this occur because they're benefiting personally. Perhaps somebody higher than them is doing it because they're benefiting personally. Perhaps there is somebody at the top who says, hey, if we can import all these people, it will be a perfect part of my genius master plan to do X, Y, and Z. But we don't know. All that we know is this. If we've got people here in America and they are willing to work without stealing from us, let them be here. As long as their property that they're inhabiting was sold to them willingly, right? That's all that there is to it. Because if I'm a private property owner, what business is it of yours if I want to sell my property to an illegal immigrant or to a legal immigrant? And so ultimately, that's where the government gets its thing going is as long as they're being housed on the government's dime, yes, their presence here is detrimental. But my point in saying that is that we don't blame them. They got their hand out and our government is taking our money and filling their hand. It might be a problem, yeah. And some of them are going to be undesirable, just as some of the people that live here already are undesirable. We just don't report their crimes because they work in law enforcement. But the people who come in here, they don't work in law enforcement. So yeah, their crimes get reported and the statistics are through the roof, of course, but I don't know, man. It's just ultimately I don't have too much of a take on it because I don't know their intentions. I just know that I don't take issue with the people. I take issue with the government solely. And I don't know the government's intentions.
But I mean, so I look at it like this. So if I sit there and shake my fist at the wall doesn't move.
True.
So I can blame the wall, but the wall is going to be the wall. And until I take a sledgehammer to the wall and knock it the fuck down, nothing's going to change. So you're saying that the government's the wall and you're blaming the wall, but I'm also seeing the effect of people that are coming into this country, right, trying to get a better life. Meanwhile, they're disenfranchising people that are already here. They're also superseding people that are going through the legal way. For anecdotally, there's a young lady who's a friend of the family. She's trying to marry a Canadian, trying to get citizenship. She's got a stack of documents like this thick that she has to fill out. She has to prove that she is capable of supporting not only herself but him as well, in order for him to be able to come into the country and get a green card, to be able to come in and start the naturalization process.
Oh yeah, that's simply ridiculous for sure. By the way, Ellis Island, when a whole bunch of Europeans were coming over here, it certainly wasn't that way. I mean, they just signed you up and let you in. So I don't think the answer is more rigorous immigration policies. But by the way, I think that your analogy there is quite disingenuous to the issue at hand. I think that a better analogy would be disease versus symptom. What you're seeing is a symptom of the disease. Now, you can try to attack the symptom. That's not going to do anything, though, right? You got to kill the disease, right? And so the disease is the government. And so yes, trying to take care of the symptom, sure, you might like have temporary effects. You might have temporary effects.
But that's where the sledgehammer against the wall comes in, Craig.
Well, the thing is we're not dealing with a wall or a sledgehammer. We're not dealing with a disease or a symptom. We're dealing with the U.S. government.
The wall is the government. The sledgehammer is the people. Yes.
Right. And by the way, the people are more akin to a feather than a sledgehammer. We aren't doing anything, by the way.
I agree.
I'm standing up. I'm looking around. I see hundreds of thousands of people around me not doing a dang thing. I see thousands of people on YouTube spread out all throughout the world supporting me. But in reality, looking around me, it's very few and far between when I find somebody saying, hey, I'm interested in exposing or fighting back. How do I do this? What advice do you have for me? So in reality, we're not a sledgehammer. This wall is going to have to crumble on its own or it ain't coming down. And that's my thing is when we stay away, because ultimately the battle is lost. They have all the power. The only way we are going to win is that when they do fall, and they will, because they're $33 trillion in debt, they don't have any income other than us. And by the way, our income is useless. It's paper dollars. We get all the goods we use from other countries. We import them. So the only way that it comes down is through an economic exhaustion. And when we reach that, it will be very important. It will be vitally important not to blame something like immigrants, not to blame something like people.
Okay, all right. Hold on, Craig. Craig, hold on.
Come back again.
All right, hold on, brother. You keep saying I'm blaming immigrants.
No. I'm just saying it's important not to.
I just don't want to get mischaracterized as I'm blaming immigrants. I'm clearly putting the blame on my government that Joe Biden was on film saying if he becomes president, it's going to be a never-ending flow of black and brown people coming across our borders. His words, not mine. I don't have a problem with the color of their skin. Those were his words, not mine. That's what he said 2 years before he even got elected. And guess what's happening? Exactly what he said. That said,
he's a unicorn because most presidents don't do what they say.
I am a different kind of person. I'm built different. I've got 9 raised garden beds. I've got an orchard. I've got a grape arbor. I've got 23 chickens. I've got two bees in my apiary, 2 bee hives in my apiary. I've got a compost section, and I'm on less than a third of an acre of land in the city. So I'm leading by example in my area. I'm not trying to get on the government tit and make sure that I'm putting up food, canning it. That I'm a solutions guy, right? I'm not built to run. Okay. I'm going to stay and fight because I'm too old to run. If I was your age,
that's right. I mean, and
if I was your age, I'd probably be in Alaska
I'm not trying to
right
say
now.
that you're blaming immigrants. I do hear you. You sound frustrated that immigrants are coming in.
I'm frustrated with the government.
It will be important to not fight the symptom. It will be important to remember the disease that got you there in the first place.
Yes,
that is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
and I'm saying that if you lose sight of that and you start focusing on symptoms, I could tell you a lot of symptoms. Start focusing on the dollar. A lot of people want to blame the companies that are raising the prices. Well, yeah, that's a symptom of inflation. That isn't the cause of it. The cause of it is the people at the Federal Reserve, the government, right? So there's a lot of different things that people take issue with.
Federal Reserve is not the government. Federal Reserve is not the government.
Who appoints the Federal Reserve chairman?
It's private.
Who appoints the Federal
IRS
Reserve?
And the Federal Reserve is not federal and it reserves nothing.
Let me tell you. Let me ask you.
It's government.
Who appoints the Federal Reserve chairman?
I don't. President.
The president. Who approves the appointment of the Federal Reserve Chairman?
Probably the House or the Congress or something. I
Both.
don't know. Okay.
Both do. And the Federal Reserve Chairman serves at whose pleasure?
The president.
So they're the government.
No, they're the people. They're
They
the
are.
people.
They are.
They're the people that are running the entire globe.
Yeah, well,
That's-
and
that's
that's the
who they are.
government. Yeah, and
Well,
yes,
yeah.
so exactly, and because they were chartered by the
Mhm.
Federal Reserve Act of 1913, they were a creation of government. They are a branch of government that prints up U.S. Federal Reserve notes, United States
Mhm.
Federal
The
Reserve
fiat
notes,
currency. Yeah.
the fiat currency.
Mhm.
It came in and the fiat currency replaced constitutional money, which in the Constitution it says that money shall be gold and silver, and the weight and measures of that will be regulated by the government. So they came in to replace a lot of stuff. And by the way, if you serve at the pleasure of government, you are going to do what the government wants you to do, and therefore you're just a branch of government. You
So,
know?
Craig, off the top of your head, you're an economist guy. Was it in the 30s when the government came and took everyone's gold and silver away, or at least their
Yeah, it
gold?
was the 30s, and then in the
Okay.
70s they outlawed the transition domestically, the conversion domestically of gold of cash into specie. They outlawed the conversion of giving the banks cash and getting specie back domestically, so that they could
Which
do
means
that
gold,
abroad.
right?
Yeah, gold, silver, bronze, all that kind of stuff. And the 30s, I believe they did it, but then I believe that they lifted that out, that illegal, that
Practice,
whole,
policy.
law that you can't own gold. I believe they lifted that at some point, but I don't know exactly when they did that. But I believe
So the problem that I have with that is, and not to interrupt you, because I think we're gonna wrap it up here in a second. I want to give you the last 5 or 6 minutes to, whatever you want to promote, whatever you want to talk about, or however long you want. So the worry that I would have, worry is not a word, the concern that I would have as a man is if I start stocking up gold again, do I have to have a fishing accident, a boating accident where, I lost my gold and dig caches in my yard? I mean, it's like, what's going to stop from coming and seizing it again? It's like crypto, fiat currency, gold. I mean, it all just seems like, I don't know, just put food in the ground, dude. I just get chickens, man. That's worth more than gold.
they
Get
can't get a
ammunition.
chicken detector.
Yeah.
But hey, that would be smart. Putting gold in the ground, I believe that would be a good idea, as long as you can remember where it's at. Ultimately, the government in history has always come and stolen gold, whether it be a foreign government or a domestic government. They do come and they steal the people's gold to fund their foreign wars or to fund their own employment of government employees. And so, yeah, it's something to be worried about. It's I mean, but gold and silver, yeah, I always advocate that people stockpile it, because a lot of people say, well, it'll raise in value. No, it won't. Gold only raises in value as much as the economy improves, because gold is, it's hard to raise the supply of gold. So ultimately, gold only improves in value when the supply of gold stays relatively the same. It increases at about 2% per year, with mining.
But wait a minute. Ben Shapiro says noble gold is something I should buy. If it's so valuable and it's going to go up in price, why wouldn't they hang on to it? But go ahead. They must be so marked up that you'll never see profit for like 50 years. But go ahead.
Well, you never see profit from gold, because gold doesn't change in value. Gold is the same gold as it is after 50 years. So ultimately, you buy gold not to raise in value. You buy gold to store value.
Yeah.
And really, historically, at least in modern history, the function of gold has been to preserve value in a terrible economy. So if the economy is failing and you don't want to invest your money with a business because you suspect it might fail, then the safe route is to just put your money in gold. You're going to keep the same value. Ultimately, gold and silver has risen in value, but only because we had the Industrial Revolution and we've built on that to where we just got so many goods today, and not in America, by the way. We don't have industrial anything here, but it's risen so much in value that, hold on.
You guys heard it here. Craig is black-pilled on the United States of America. All right. So.
All right. Sorry about that. My kid's wandered in here. He's going to go play real quick. But silver is the same way. Silver stores value as well. And ultimately, I believe what Peter Schiff believes, who is a world-renowned economist. There's a ton of videos out there called Peter Schiff Was Right, where you've got this American hero whose dad died protesting the income tax, up on CNN and Fox News, or it's not Fox News, it's Fox Business on CNBC, and all these mainstream economists are trying to laugh him off the show because he's out there espousing that the economy is going to crash in 2006. When the economy crashed in 2008, he was predicting it 2 years prior. And the same with 2012. There's two different series of it. But this guy tends to believe that gold is so vastly underpriced right now because of certain economic factors that I quite honestly forget. I'm an economics enthusiast. I'm not an economist, though. But, and I tend to believe that as well. I tend to believe that gold will raise in value because the dollar, this is the reason I believe the dollar is propped up in value. I believe there has not been a currency in the history of the world that's been inflated in reality more than the dollar. It's just that because we have the world's reserve currency status, we're able to export our dollars.
Not for long.
We don't see that inflation domestically, right? A lot of that inflation happens abroad.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but ultimately when that money comes back, because they realize, well, look, we got these dollars, they're going to be worthless. We want to cash it in. They're going to start coming here. They're going to start buying land. They're going to start coming here and buying cars and having them shipped back home. They're going to start coming here with their money, and we're going to see that inflation like that. And when we see that inflation come in, the price of gold will not be any exception to that inflation. That price will go through the roof. But the fact of the matter is that the value will never increase. The value stays exactly the same unless we find more uses for the metal.
Yeah, I always feel a little smarter when I talk to you, man. I really do, because a lot of I do have skill sets. This is not one of them. So Lawrence, I'm hearing a lot of this. This is a common theme, and everyone's like, where is he gonna go? Though it's a secret. He doesn't want competition.
Well, yeah, I don't want to open. I'm going to go where there's an anarcho-capitalist president. So if anybody knows where that is, you know where I'm going to go. But and by the way, by the time I go, it could change. So wherever the best government in my estimation is at that current time, I will go there. And I also saw a question about how are you going to avoid the same issues in government that you avoid here. I'll be honest, a lot of people talk about running and whatnot, and I am extremely passionate about America, and I was brought up thinking that I had these rights. So when I'm lied to, I'm gonna speak up. But there are plenty of other countries that don't claim to have rights. So when they violate them, you pretty much knew exactly what you were bargaining for.
All right, Hendry. I want to hear you roll your R's like a proper Scotsman.
All right.
That's what I said.
All right. I'll roll the R's then, won't I?
I was like, brandy. Do you know how fine you are to me, lass?
We'll get us a nice wee shot of brandy, won't we? A nice wee cup of scotch.
That's my wife's name, though. I call her. I'm like, brandy. Do you know how fine you are to me, lass? She starts cracking up.
Yeah. Absolutely,
so,
man.
I wish you luck. I'm hearing you're kind of black-pilled on the United States of America, and I think anyone that's looking in the mirror, looking around, is kind of like, you'd be kind of an idiot not to see the writing on the wall. That said, I love my country. I'm gonna fight for it. I'm gonna die for it. I've got too much invested, and like I said, my hip. And that said, listen, man, I wish you Godspeed, and I would like to give you an opportunity to promote whatever you want to promote. You have your mods, make sure they're putting whatever in the, well, they are anyway. So, but go ahead, man, you got the floor. And thank you, by the way. Thank you so much for coming up.
And by the way, thanks for having me. I always love having a conversation with you. I'll exit on I'll explain my reasoning for wanting to leave, because I think a lot of people will misinterpret that as running. I do think this. So in today's age, in this day and age, we have an incredible ability to change our location within 12 hours. We can fly to most locations on the world. Yeah. And to be quite honest, during the Revolutionary War, they just didn't have that. They didn't have the ability. If they wanted to leave a country, they had to spend 3 or 4 months on a very dangerous boat, transversing one of the most dangerous pieces of geography on the earth. So really, not geography, of the ocean and the earth. And so really, the point is this, that back in the Revolutionary War, they fought because the cost of losing their life was, in their estimation, lower than the cost of dealing with this tyranny.
Yeah.
And it was also lower than the cost of perhaps losing your life just trying to leave. So and ultimately their families were a massive factor in their decision when they decided to go out to fight. Now, there were a lot of young men, but there were also a lot of married men. There were a lot of men who left for young kids, and they went and they died, right? And that's a tragic thing. And I'm going to be honest with you, if I was alive back then, they wouldn't have had any problem recruiting me, because I'm certain that I wouldn't have wanted to hop back on a boat to travel to a place like Africa or Europe again, or Asia, or anywhere, right? You might as well dig your heels into the ground and fight for what you have right here, especially when most of them had quite a large piece of land, a lot of farmers. But in this day and age, we don't deal with those same restrictions. And for all of you that have families, it's a very sobering reality to realize that whatever you're going through right now, it is only getting worse. So I have, for example, spent about a year in jail in total on charges that I maintain were nonsense. Now, I don't want to deal with that for the rest of my life. And the consequences of fighting the US government, the state government, are so costly, you're not getting much past your front door, right? They've got your cell phone bugged by the NSA. They've got every other governmental agency has access to that. All they got to do is ask for it politely. And they're gathering metadata. So if you ultimately try to organize and you try to fight back against tyranny, you are going to meet a very ugly end. That being said, I love my family. I love my son. I love my woman, and I love my soon-to-be born daughter. And I love them so much that I'm willing to leave many other people that I love. I love my mother. I love my father. I love my brother. But I can't force these people to come with me. I can't force my family. I'm lucky that I've got Erica. She wants to stay with me, and even through thick and thin, right? Going to another country. But ultimately, I can't force my mom and dad to leave with me. I hope they do. I hope they decide, hey, you're living great over there. We'd like to come see what you're doing. But ultimately, it's less costly and more beneficial to me and my loved ones to exit this place, to emigrate from this place. It's becoming a terribly ugly place. And ultimately, life is what you make it. So if we get out to, wherever we go, and we just start living right, we don't steal, we don't join the government. I'd even advocate, I won't go that far. I don't support the government. Let me put it like that. And I advocate that nobody else does as well.
Why do you get to say something kind of witty and funny right when I'm getting ready to take a drink of coffee? I was like trying to hold it back. I was like,
well,
by the way, morning mist. That's my fine redheaded lass. That's my Brande.
Brilliant. I'm glad that she could make it here, man. That's awesome. But with that being said, everybody, I hate to. My point in this isn't to try to justify my actions. My point in this is to try to get everybody else to kind of realize that. I like everybody. I have great respect for all life and all humans. Yep. And I'd hate to see anybody meet a fatal end just because they were too naive to leave this country before it gets too bad.
Yep.
And I would advocate that everybody that has the means to make a contingency plan. Figure out what you're going to do if this government gets so terrible that you can't bear it and it's too dangerous for your loved ones to stay. Even if you don't ever put that plan into action, I hope it never gets to that point for most. But for some, it's extremely dangerous already, and we have got to get out of here. The only question is, will they let us? That's
a really good question. I often thought, not to kind of step on your extra, as it were. How you doing, Culture Club? Veveris, Veris. Anyone with that last name in America is related to me by blood. I've heard from my father that we have land rights in Greece.
Wow.
And okay. I thought, because the males left to come to America, and a lot of the married or widowed or spinsters, they basically took over the olive groves and the vineyards and stuff. And
yeah.
I asked my dad, I'm like, you ever think about going back? I'd love to go back to where it all came from, Italian and Greek. And then the rest is like Viking rape genes.
Yeah.
Like, what I'm talking about.
Yeah, totally.
But it's like, and he was like, well, who am I to tell these people how to run their lands? They've been doing it for centuries now. And it's like, you kind of like to go back to your roots, man. And I like it, man. I like that you're sailing towards your roots. And a lot of people said Godspeed, and I wish you bon voyage. Whether the plan comes to fruition, hopefully you don't have to exercise it. but I do. I wish you and your family the best, man, and Godspeed, indeed.
Well, thank you. And likewise, by the way, I wish you and your family the best. I wish everybody in their family the best. Even the people that dislike me, I think that their reality will change as soon as these things that I'm predicting come to fruition. And I really do feel for them, because they will be the most naive among us.
They'll be the first ones lined against the wall.
Yes, and they will be the most adversely affected. And so it's extremely sad for me to see that. But best of luck to everybody here. And I hope that we all do have plans. I do want to say that my activism is not stopped. There are a lot of people that have seen my new setup. They think that I'm stopping my activism. I haven't stopped my activism. I have changed format in most.
I like it.
Thank you.
I really like it. I'm glad you mentioned that, Craig, because I want you. Feel free. Tell me what, because I'm like looking at it. It's very professional. It's very respectful. And look, people are having a hard time finding someone that will actually tell them the truth. You know?
And I'm certainly not somebody who's so up to date on most matters that I can form opinions or report the truth on most things. But what I do get my hands on, I try to bring to the public's attention. And, that basically my goal is not to stop activism and try to be a newscaster. My goal is simply to bring a new, more professional light to my activism, because it's serious work. It's serious business out here. And there's serious consequences for people who choose to expose government officials. And I don't want anybody to think that by the way that I present myself, or by the way that I present this activism, that I am in any way taking this lightheartedly or as a joke. This is life or death for many people. There are many people that are sitting in jail that haven't harmed anybody, that haven't stolen from anybody, that haven't vandalized any property. And that's a serious thing. And it's something that we don't think about every night before we go to bed. But when they're sitting in their cage and they're about to go to bed, they feel pretty bad about it. There we go. We got the new setup on show. So that's the kind of look that I'm going for here. But in this particular video here, I'm interviewing an ex-combat veteran who is of the same breed as Generally Specific here. He's also a combat veteran. And he tells a story of him sitting in a cage for 10 days. And so it's serious business. It's nothing to be joked about. And I want to reflect that in the way that I present it. So that's merely all I'm doing. I'm not changing what I'm doing or changing my perspective or changing the seriousness of which I present that to the public officials that I'm talking to. I mean, I still hammer these people.
Yeah,
and I'm not
I've
pulling
heard it.
any punches. Yeah, I'm not pulling any punches, and I'm doing it to their face still. It's just that when you see the video, you'll see it with this setup as my commentary setup. And I think that it lends a little bit more credence to it.
It just, if you'll indulge me, I just kind of want to keep playing this part over so that people can see your setup. And I want people to go watch that interview if they haven't already. Matter of fact, I'll put the link in the chat right before
it's
we
a
leave.
Great interview. It's got like 10% me, 90% Bo from Flex Your Freedoms. And let me tell you, that guy has got a story that you need to hear. I'm telling you. Whether
you stole my exclusive interview. I was the first person he committed to get interviewed with.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I was waiting.
Oh man,
I was waiting for him.
I didn't know this.
No, it's perfect, man. You did an awesome job.
Thank
I'm
you.
glad. It would have been awkward. It would have been like we would have been smelling each other's paratrooper farts and stuff. And so.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you about. I watched a lot of your videos where you're at the town councils and you're you're giving these people like a Cliff Note version of how to conduct themselves. And it's like, what is their reaction? Do they sit there and listen? Do they sit there and take it? Are they giving you feedback? Do they not give a rat's ass? I mean, what is your take on, is it a wasted effort?
It depends on the people. I think the effort that I'm making is not to change these people's mind, but I hope that I'm able to along the way. The effort that I'm trying to make is to expose the evils of government, that no matter how articulately you put together a presentation to these people, they aren't going to be open to it most of the time. There will be some times that they're open to it, but that doesn't mean in the future when I'm not there to stop it, that it won't go through. For example, one of the videos that I made, and it's on the channel that I'm streaming this on, most people that are here will have already seen it, shows me preventing an anti-free speech ordinance from being passed. And what I'm saying is, just because it didn't pass when I was there to speak about it, doesn't mean that 2 months from now, when I'm not there, that they won't just slip it in through the cracks. And ultimately, I mean, it's really to show the people what these people are all, the people out here, what the people on the councils, what the people on the town boards are all about. I think their reaction is reserved for when they get home at night. I don't think they give me their reaction. I'll put it like that. They're very poker faced. Yeah. Very rarely do I get an honest, genuine answer from these people when I ask it.
Yeah. So somebody had mentioned earlier, and we'll let it go here. We're definitely at that mark for you, and we're almost at the 1 hour and 30 minute. Somebody had mentioned earlier, why don't you run for office? And would you entertain the fact that it seems like unless you're corrupted or corruptible, unless you're controlled or controllable, you're not going to rise to any level of meaning, and you'll be hampered along the way. If you just happen to get lucky to get voted in, they're gonna hamstring you at every turn. They're gonna do whatever they can to relegate you or to discredit you, destroy you. So I hear what you're saying, and I know it sounds really blackpilling to a lot of people, but wake up, folks. I mean, look around you.
With regards to the office thing, I'm not eligible due to my criminal history to run for office. But also, I mean, like I say before, when I did think about it before I ever attained any criminal charges, I would always come back to. So there's an old adage, not ancient. There's an old adage that was said by Lord Acton, and I believe I'm quoting it directly here. It's that power tends to corrupt, but absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yep.
And I am not confident enough in myself to believe that I am incorruptible or uncorruptible. I just think that would be naive. I think if you waived any amount of money to provide my family security for the rest of their life, I'm not sure that I would turn it down. So, and that's a thing that I think people kind of put politicians on a pedestal for, and I don't believe that they're any different than me.
Well, I can say for myself, I've been weighed, I've been measured, and I've not been found wanting. My price is my life. So that means I'm not viable. I'm not. I've had these conversations with my wife in several situations, and I said, I'm sorry, honey, if my actions or my decisions end up hurting you somehow, but it's a principal thing for me. It's something that I'm willing to take all the way to the grave. So the question is the government willing to take me to the grave? And it seems, yes, they are.
They are. And that's something, and I'll say it like this. A lot of people have that mentality, and a lot of people settle lawsuits before they go to trial.
Yeah, until.
Well, and this is the thing is like a lot, every time you settle a lawsuit before you go to trial, ultimately you're taking a bribe from the government. And by the way, if the government bribes me to not take them to trial, I mean, it'll have to be a pretty high price. It'll have to be a high enough price to get me and my family out of the country. But as soon as they pay me, and look, I'm out of your hair. So if anybody's watching from the government, just go ahead and cut me that check, because I'll be honest, I don't need to be here. I don't want to be here. You don't want me here. So go ahead, get me out of here. You know what I mean?
I want you here, and I think the people that are here to watch you. We're being selfish. I wish you and your family the best. I really do, and
I appreciate that.
Don't stop smiling, bro, and don't stop asking questions, and don't stop fighting for the right thing. Your family has to be your top priority. You're not out here saving the world, dude. You're trying to take care of your family.
Yeah, and if we can expose some evil in the world along the way, let's do it. And just because I move doesn't mean that I stop. It just means that I'm out of danger, and it means that I'm not on the front lines. But it doesn't mean that I completely stop. I don't know what that looks like, but I'm excited. I'm excited to find out. We'll put it like that. So Todd, I reflect your sentiment. I hope that you and your family take care. I know that you guys are taking care. From what you've told me, it sounds like you're doing really good where you're at, and I'm glad that you're doing that. So thanks again for having me on. This has been a brilliant experience.
Would you stand by for a minute? I'm going to do the outro, and then it'll be just you and I, and I just want to close up with you. Is that all right? Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you once again, everyone. If I missed any questions, I apologize. Once again, second time, our second visitation from Craig. I wish him all the best and his family. His girlfriend's a rock star, and I'm glad your son is going to have someone like you to teach him. I really think that's a blessing, man. And we'll see you on the next one, guys.
The only thing that enrages me is when you hear people say, you must believe me. I have no obligation to believe anybody. You have an obligation, if you want me to believe you, to prove what you're saying. I have a right to ask simple, fair questions. How do you know that? How can I trust that? And if you don't give me those answers, then I just don't believe you. And I don't have to believe you. And if your recourse is, you're a bad person for not believing me, fuck you.